So you believe God is white?
First of all, white man, let me say that I love you, honor you, envy you, enjoy your smell, and I celebrate you in the name of white Jesus. Look at that. That's a handsome young man, ain't it?
What did Yeshua really look like? Everyone knows what Jesus looks like. A quick Google search of Jesus will pull up an assortment of images showing a tall, white guy with long, blondish hair and a beard. He is the most painted figure in all of Western art. Jesus is so familiar that he can be recognized on pancakes or pieces of toast. But did he really look like this? Probably not. This familiar image of Jesus actually comes from the Byzantine era. From the 4th century onwards, and Byzantine representations of Jesus were symbolic. They were all about meaning, not historical accuracy. These iconic artistic depictions of Jesus looked nothing like a typical 1st century Jewish man in the Roman province of Judea. While we have no solid evidence of what the real face of Jesus looked like, he probably did not resemble the paintings hanging in most Western churches today. So how do we imagine a Jew at this time? A man about 30 years of age when he began. According to Luke chapter 3, Jesus was Jewish. That Jesus was a Jew is certain in that it is found repeated in diverse literature, including in the letters of Paul. And, as the letter to the Hebrews states, it is clear that our Lord was descended from Judah. The Gospels and the Bible say that Jesus was a Jew who was born around 4 BC in Bethlehem and lived in Egypt as a child for a short time before moving to Nazareth. These writings make no mention of what Jesus looked like, aside from some references to the clothing that he and his disciples wore. To get an idea of what Jesus may have looked like, we can turn to archaeology and texts that provide clues about the general appearance of Jews in Judea and Egypt at the time Jesus lived. There was interaction between Judea and people from Europe as well as Sudan and Ethiopia. But because Jews in Judea and Egypt tended to marry among themselves at the time, Jesus' skin, eyes, and hair probably looked like those of the majority of the people in Judea and Egypt. Surviving texts say that Jews in Egypt couldn't be physically distinguished from the rest of Egypt's population around Jesus' time. Historical records also showed that people in Judea tended to keep their hair reasonably short and well combed, probably to keep out lice, a big problem at the time. Jesus probably had a beard and short curly hair with long sideburns or payot. Remember, Jesus was Jewish and would have followed the law in Leviticus 19:27, which said, "You shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard." Even today, Orthodox Jewish men grow long hair on the sides of their heads. Shorter hair was considered the norm for Jewish men and for Romans. Jesus is portrayed in the Gospels as a carpenter or mason who did a lot of walking but at times didn't have much to eat. This active lifestyle, but lack of regular food, meant that he was probably thin, but somewhat muscular. Jesus was a man who was physical, and he shouldn't be thought of as someone who was living a soft life. And sometimes that's the kind of image we get. Some aspects of Jesus' face are anyone's guess. He may have had facial scars or skin damage from his work as a carpenter, but there's no way to tell that. The Gospels, along with surviving archaeological remains, do provide some hints about Jesus' clothing. He likely wore a woolen, undyed tunic that left his lower legs bare, possibly a loincloth, and a mantle or outer cloak to stay warm. His shoes would have looked like modern-day sandals, and the high price of clothing meant that Jesus likely did a lot of mending. Also, unless someone provided him with fresh clothing, what he wore would become more tattered as time went on. From his clothing, I think what you would think of Jesus is someone who just looked very poor. Back in 2001, forensic anthropologist Richard Neave created a model of a Galilean man for a BBC documentary, Son of God, working on the basis of an actual skull found in the region. He did not claim it was Jesus's face. It was simply meant to prompt people to consider Jesus as being a man of his time and place, since we are never told he looked distinctive. Matthew, Mark, Peter, and John were disciples of Jesus who traveled with Jesus during his time of ministry, and each of them wrote books about Jesus. It is remarkable that none of the books written by Jesus' followers contain any description of his appearance. The New Testament authors made sure we focused on Jesus' message and his heart. When we feel average or less than, when people despise us or ridicule us because of the way we look, we need to remember that Jesus was average. He wasn't considered good-looking or beautiful, and people ridiculed him and even spat on him. People often judge based outward appearance. This is not what Christians should do. Our worth is not based on how we look or how popular or attractive we are. Our worth is based on God's love for us because he made every human in his image.